But we learned the hard way. It's by doing it, and seeing other people. We learned it, and we picked our own leaders for the squad. See, and picked the right leader, the left leader at front, and we just learned, and that's how we learned how to march.
Can you describe the aircraft mechanic school, what that was like?
Uh, the first day, uh, we had a woman instructor, and there's about 25 of us in the class, and the first day they had seats. We sat down at desks. So we all sat down, and she came in the room, and she said, "Gentlemen," she said, "this is what they call a screwdriver." I could have hit her, you know. She had a little screwdriver about that long. Well, I guess she thought we didn't know what a screwdriver was. But that was our first day in school. After that, we didn't have any more seats. You couldn't sit down. Every class, you stood up. And we went so many days in day shift, and so many days in night shift, and so many days in graveyard shift. And then you rotated, see.
So you were just doing hands-on training?
Hands-on. Everything was hands-on. And you didn't repair anything, you just removed and replaced. Like a starter or a generator or a carburetor. You didn't overhaul them, you just took the old one off and put the new one on, see.
What did you like best about the training that you had?
Beg pardon?
What did you like best about your time at the aircraft mechanic school?
Oh, that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I wanted.
Yeah. So what part of it did you like best?
Well, all of it, yeah. Because we knew that at the end of it, when we finished the school, we'd graduate as aerial engineers, and that's what we were striving to. We wanted to fly, see. So that's what we got. When we graduated, we became flyers. It was what they called aerial engineers.
Okay. Was there anything in the mechanic school that you found was difficult or challenging?
No, not really.
So you had a knack for mechanics?
I've always been mechanically inclined. It was pretty easy for me, really. Here, for instance, you go into the engine room, it had the engine mounted, and it was runnable, And this instructor would go in there, and he'd jimmy it so it wouldn't start. So you had to go in there and find out why the thing wouldn't start. And it wasn't. I didn't have too much trouble. He either had a switch in the ignition system, or he had a valve in the fuel system shut off, or whatever. You could find them, if you was inclined to know that. See, so it wasn't too much trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing that you had was when they put you in an aircraft and where somebody had torn out all the cables, and then you had to recable that thing like your control cables, And it was difficult trying to find out where they went and how they went, That was the biggest challenge.
Okay. How long were you in the mechanic school?
I can't remember whether it was 7 weeks or 9 weeks. It's in my paperwork, but I don't remember exactly. It seemed like it was 9 weeks.
Okay. So when you finished up, you graduated and you were an aero engineer, right?
Yes.
Okay. And what happened after that?
Okay, when I graduated at Shepherd Field for advanced training, I went from Shepherd Field to Baltimore, Maryland, to Glen L. Martin. See, I went to school on B-26s, bombers, medium bombers, and the B-25, which is North American B-25, which is Mitchell. Well, when I graduated, they sent me to Glen L. Martin up in Maryland. That was B-26 factory. And we was up there, I was up there 30 days. We followed the plane from the minute it was started until it was finished. That was just for the advanced training, see. And then when I left there, I went to Omaha, Nebraska to another advanced training for Glenn Martin. And there I picked up my plane. And when I picked up my plane, I was ready for flight then, see. So I went from there to Selfridgefield, Michigan. Three of us, three planes in the crew. Three men crews, all we had. The pilot, a co-pilot, and the air engineer. So when we got to Selfridgefield, they didn't want us. There was three planes, and they didn't want us because we didn't have advanced training. I mean, as far as we weren't ready for combat, see. So they shipped us down to, I was there about a week, 10 days maybe. But the town, little old Mount Clemens was off limits. You couldn't go to town. But it was during, right at that time was a Memorial Day. So we marched in town. They let us go in town and march, you know, parade. But they wouldn't let us go down to the pass. It's off limits, see. But anyway, after that, they shipped us out, and we went down to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, to an advanced base down there. There was a group that was getting ready to go overseas. And we tried to get with them, but they didn't want us because none of us guys had any gunnery. So we couldn't join them. So from there we went on. They shipped us down to MacDill Field, Florida, to the 21st Bomb Group, and that's where I was assigned to the 398th, and that's where I stayed as long as I was flying as an engineer.
Okay, so you're with the 398th
398th Squadron.
Squadron.
21st Bomb Group.
21st Bomb Group.
21st Bomb Group.
Okay. Now, just for the purpose of someone who maybe isn't familiar with, you know, what was happening in World War II as far as the way the planes would be set up with the different men that were involved with the plane. You talk about that there's a pilot and a co-pilot and an aero engineer. Can you tell me what each of those persons was responsible for in the plane?
Well, of course, the pilot was the pilot, and the co-pilot, he had responsibilities he was supposed to take care of the landing gear and the flaps and check all the gauges, make sure the gauges were reading right, you know, and take over in case something happened to the pilot. The pilot had a heart attack or got hit or whatever, then the co-pilot to fly that plane. Well, this did get a little ahead of time here, but when I was in Florida, when my Lieutenant Gleese was my pilot, Lieutenant Gleese said that he wanted all men in that crew, his crew, to know how to fly that aircraft, because any man could fly that plane home if need be, see. But if just he or the co-pilot was the only two men aboard that plane that could fly that plane, if they both got hit, and it's highly possible, then you were doomed. I mean, you couldn't fly, nobody else to fly that plane, see. But then the pilot had his responsibilities, co-pilot had his, and the engineer had his. He had to perform daily pre-flights on that plane before every morning. He pre-flight that aircraft, whether he flew it or not. You had to pre-flight that aircraft, and you never carried. If everything was perfect, you never carried your log on your initial. If you checked everything out and everything checked out perfect, you signed your initial down here, meaning that you verified that everything was perfect. Well, you were responsible for that aircraft. So you always carried it on a red diagonal. And a red diagonal down here at the bottom, you put down what that red diagonal meant, like as if you had a scuffed right tire, or you had some little something that insignificant, see, but you wouldn't sign your name. You just put it on a red diagonal. So if you're ready, if the plane was ready to fly, could be flown. But in order for the pilot to fly that plane, he had to sign that diagonal off, see. So he signed that off. He was responsible. See what I mean? Now, if you pre-flighted that aircraft and there was something wrong, you put a red X in this little square. So nobody could sign that plane off. Even the pilot couldn't sign his name. That plane was not flyable, see, until that was repaired.
Now, can you tell me what is entailed with the pre-flight?
Yes, pre-flight meant that you had to start the engine. You checked your pressures, your oil pressure, and your fuel pressure, and you run up your engine. You check to make sure your prop was working properly, and you made sure that you had 2 mags on it, and each cylinder had 2 spark plugs, and mags. One mag took care of one row of spark plugs, and the other mag took care of the other row of spark plugs. So when you revved your engine up and you shut off one mag, if that engine was off 200 RPM, you had to change spark plugs. But if it didn't lose 200 RPM, then you went to the other mag, see, and checked it. But you couldn't lose over 200 RPM, or you couldn't take that plane off the ground. And we would do our best. We'd sit there and burn those things out, so that rev it up and run the engine a long time to burn those spark plugs and get the carbon off of them and whatnot to make sure that they did short out, and then give you your 200 RPM drop. If you get to where it would drop 200 RPM, you could take it to air, see.
Okay. Now, what kind of planes were you mostly working on or with?
In Florida, it was the B-26. It was what they call the Martin Marauder, and we had the name for it, the Widowmaker and the Flying Cigar. And we had a motto there in Tampa Bay. We had a motto there at MacDill Field, 1 a day in Tampa Bay, and we just about lost 1 a day in Tampa Bay through pilot error. Jimmy, the military or the government stopped the B-26 program when I was down there. And that's when they shipped all of us out. But Jimmy Doolittle said, there's nothing wrong with that aircraft. He said, let me fly it. So he come down and flew it. Not at our base, but one base. He flew the B-26. He said, this is a good ship. He said, this pilot error is what's doing it, see. And he was right. It was a good ship. But I lost my ship. It wasn't through pilot error, though. It was through hydraulic failure. We lost our ship.
What, can you describe that?
And we landed and come to stop, and the brake system worked off the hydraulic system. Most aircraft in those days worked off, your brakes worked a separate system, hydraulically. But this B-26 worked off of your main hydraulic system. It was reduced down. Your pressure was reduced down from 1,000 RPM, 1,000 PSI down to, I think, 350, something like that. And that was your brake pressure. But when we landed, we had hydraulic pressure, but when we went to stop, we didn't have any, we lost everything. And we couldn't stop. So we hit an aircraft, we hit another plane, we hit a truck, and we hit the hangar.
Wow.
And wiped us out.
Was anybody injured?
No. All 3 of us got out without. I got a scratch on my finger, but that was it. And when the pilot said no brakes, the co-pilot put emergency brake, and between the pilot and the co-pilot, up between was 2 emergencies. One was Bombay to drop the bomb to salvo the bombs, and one was your brake control, air brakes. Well, the co-pilot grabbed that first thing he found, and he salvoed the Bombays, and didn't do any good. But by the time I got a hold of that brake, the air brake, we'd hit. And I didn't know I'd pulled it. I got a hold of it, but I didn't know I'd pulled it. So during the inquest, this colonel got up and said, "What I want to know is who pulled the air brake." Well, at that time, the pilot came to me and said, "Did you pull it?" And I said, "I don't know." But when he asked that question, the pilot looked at me and winked. He knew damn well I had pulled it accidentally, see. Just the momentum of stopping, I pulled it, see. But that was the one thing that saved us from buying that plane.
That was in Florida?
That was in Florida.
That was in Florida. Okay. So you were in Florida with the 398th Squadron, and what happened after you were stationed there in Florida?
Beg pardon?
What happened after Florida, after being stationed?
Okay, when 21st Bomb Group broke up, they shipped us all out, and a bunch of us was shipped to Louisiana. And I can't remember the name of the base, but it was a pilot training base, a pilot trainer to fly P-47 aircraft, fighter aircraft. And so I got there, and they gave me a plane to crew and some guys to help me, and we crewed that plane, and we taught those guys to fly those P-47s. And I did that till I got a chance to go overseas, and I took it.
Tell me about how you got that chance to go overseas.
We just got word that there was looking for guys to go over as volunteers, and we thought, well, that was our chance to get back into a bomber group. See, our only chance to get back, get out of the fighter group, because we were trained for bombers. See, and we were crewing fighter aircraft. And we thought we was out of place, so we thought, well, let's get overseas, but we get back into a bomber group. Well, when we signed up and went overseas.
So
I left there and went to Dyersburg, Tennessee, and that was our processing point. That's where they processed all our clothes and made sure we was all in, clothes were all in good shape and everything. And they gave us a gun. That's where they give us a rifle. And then I left Dyersburg and I went to New Jersey, Camp Kilmer. That was my debarkation center.
Okay. Now, what year was that? Do you remember when that was? When you were in New Jersey?
February 43.
And so so you're in New Jersey and you're getting ready to deploy and head out to Europe, right? Was where
Yeah.
they were sending you. How did you feel about that you were getting ready to go in?
I was ready to go.
Yeah.
Well, if I hadn't been, I never would have signed up to go, I could have stayed there in Louisiana.
Okay. So you're in the European, and your port of embarkation was in New Jersey, right?
Right.
Okay.
We left Camp Kilmer and got on the Queen Elizabeth. 17,000 of us.
Do you remember what it was like on the boat?
Do what?
Do you remember what it was like on the boat?
Hectic. You couldn't reach out nowhere without touching a human being, And there was 27 of us in a little old stateroom, and one toilet, one lavatory. 27 of us. We're a bit crowded. It was a British ship, and of course all crewed by British, and we had 2 meals a day, because they couldn't feed over 2 meals a day. There's too many of us, And I think they're lucky to feed that many people twice a day. But we thought we were starving to death, and mostly oatmeal for breakfast and something about mutton in the evening. And it seemed like when you got out of chow line in the morning and ate, you got back in the chow line for the evening, because it took you that long to go, to eat. So we thought we was about to starve to death, and we was scouting around the ship one evening, and we found where they were soaking some prunes behind a chain link fence. And we waited till things got kind of quiet, and you didn't see over 15, 20 people at one time, and we broke into that chain link fence, and we got a canteen cup full of prunes, each one of us. And we ate those damn prunes. And can you imagine one toilet the next day? But we didn't starve to death. We finally made it. It was only 6 days going over.
Okay. So 6 days. Where did you land at?
Scotland. Landed in Scotland. And we landed in Scotland, and then we boarded the train and went to England. And got down to a relocation center down there, and we thought, well, now here's where we're going to get back in the bomber group.